Yes, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back here with you on this beautiful Friday morning, the 27th of February, 2026, the second last day of the month, as we head into the weekend, and subsequently a new month, which will kick off on first. That will be Sunday. But for our friends, Muslim friends, I hope you're enjoying Ramadan. Our Catholic or Christian friends, I hope you're enjoying a Lent period. I hope you've dedicated yourself to the Lord. I hope you're very forgiving and repentant in the same aspect or in the same respect, because it is that period that demands us to be very apologetic of our shortfalls, but also be very forgiving to those that we think have harmed us in one way or the other. Anyways, I'm not a preacher, so I will not get into the specifics, but I hope you're all well. For those of you that were part of our conversation last night, I wish to send my sincere vote of thanks to you all for participating in last night's broadcast, as we discussed a wide range of topics that included the Cristiano Ronaldo's investment in Almeria, that included Benfica's, a recent statement about Gianluca Prestiani, that included the UEFA Champions League a little bit. And then, of course, we're also following up on updates from the UEFA Europa League, as Fenerbahce beat up against Nottingham Forest by 2-1. And then Crystal Palace winning against Monster by 2-0 in their own game in the UEFA Conference League. So, and then, of course, we also touched on the topic of racism. Once again, bit of sour grape for us. And then the Premier League's new move to, stream games, or to bring Premier League games via a streaming app or platform over there in the Singapore, where it's going to be inaugurated, or, first tested and sampled. And if it does work out, according to Richard's Master, the Premier League chairman, or is it chairman or chief executive officer, I think one of the two titles, says then they will look to expand it to other spaces. So this beautiful morning, again, we'll be having our attention drawn to the UEFA Champions League draws that are set for today for the round of 16. Of course, those of the UEFA Europa League will subsequently be conducted, as well as those of the UEFA Europa League the Conference League and the Europa League that formulate the three tournaments, club football tournaments of European football or UEFA competitions. But before we get into the conversation of the draws, like I said, Nottingham Forest yesterday managed to advance at the expense of Fenerbahce. That was 4-2 on aggregate, having won the first leg by 3-0. Yesterday, they got beat by 2-1, one being a penalty, and the other, an open goal in either half, respectively. But it was the penalty call that came last. And then Callum Hudson-Odoi came off the bench to score what turned out to be a mere consolation on the night, but a very crucial goal in the tie there for Nottingham Forest, whose manager, Invita Pereira, looked really, really concerned, but he also had a whole host of changes to his starting 11. We saw Lorenzo Lucas start in that game. We saw players like James Marketing, Nicolas Dominguez, Omari Hudson start in the forward lines. We had Ryan Yates in that midfield. We had, of course, alongside the usual suspect there in Elliot Anderson, but Ibrahim Sangare had to be introduced in the second half and things like that. But it was Karim Aktokoglu, that scored that press that helped Fenerbahce win their game despite going out. So they will hold their heads high up, but they will know that they were dumped out of the competition in that regard. So we go into today's draws, knowing that at least Nottingham Forest is another Premier League team that has made it to the round of 16 in as far as the UEFA Europa League is concerned. I say that particularly because Aston Villa had already made it through when they finished within the top, the very, the creme de la creme, or the top 8 in as far as the competition is concerned. But also on the same night, we did witness Crystal Palace beat up against Monster by 2-0. Those goals coming from Maxence Lecour as well as Ivan Guessand were the goal scorers as Oliver Glasner's side managed to win that game. Ivan Guessand's goal coming very, very late on in that game, but it was Maxence Lecour that had scored to give Crystal Palace the very, very deserved lead in that game. So that means Crystal Palace are also advanced 3-1 on aggregate at the expense of Monster in that competition. So but in summary, from the UEFA Europa League, Olympique Lyon advanced at the expense of Cevena Zvezda. French Varos advanced at the expense of Ludogorets. Stuttgart went through at the expense of Celtic. Victoria Pilsen were knocked out by Panathinaikos on penalties that proceeded a 3-3 aggregate score after over 2 legs. Then Bologna advanced at the expense of Brann by 2-0 in aggregate score, while Celta Vigo got the better of PAOK 3-1 on aggregate to go to the round of 16. Dinamo Zagreb were unfortunately knocked out 6-4. I think, 6-4 on aggregates, but yesterday it was a 3-all draw, and then Nottingham Forest winning their tie 4-2 on aggregate to advance to the next round. So really, Fiorentina in the UEFA Conference League also managed to advance at the expense of Białystok there 5-4 on aggregate score. So those are some of the key takes that I thought you guys should take note of for what transpired in as far as those two competitions were concerned. Now, I just wanted to find for you a list of the final 16 teams that are making it to the round of 16 in as far as the UEFA Europa League is concerned. I hope I can quickly find that list for you, because sometimes reading off badges can have you misfiring a little bit. Misfiring a little bit. So, okay. Come on. I'm browsing through the UEFA websites to find some of these teams, but okay, yes, here's the round of 16 teams. Aston Villa from the Premier League, Bologna from Italy, Braga from Portugal, Celta Vigo from Spain, French Varos from Hungary, Freiburg from Germany, Genk from Belgium, Lille from France, Lyon from France, Midtjylland from Denmark, Nottingham Forest from England, Panathinaikos from Greece, FC Porto from Portugal, and Real Betis from Spain, as well as Roma from Italy and Stuttgart from Germany are the 16 teams that have made it to the round of 16 there. So in terms of setup of the draw or how teams are expected to meet each other is not different from that of the UEFA Champions League, where teams that have come through the playoffs have an either-or option with the teams that had finished in the top 8. So, for example, Nottingham Forest will have to meet either Real Betis or Midtjylland for the round of 16. Bologna will be either up against Roma or what's the name of the team? Come on. Or French Varos. Yes, it could be either or. So in that sort of regard, won't dive too much into the UEFA Conference League. I usually want to take keen interest in the UEFA Conference League once it reaches the quarterfinals, semifinals kind of level there, really, if I'm being honest, because majority of the teams in there are unknown to me, if I'm being honest. But moving on. So with that said, allow me move on to the UEFA Champions League, whose final 16 were confirmed the other day, and we are destined for the draws today at 2 p.m. East African time, for those of you that would want to catch a glimpse of those draws. For the teams that went through the playoffs, they include Real Madrid, Paris Saint-Germain, Newcastle. They include Atletico de Madrid from Spain, Atalanta from Italy, Bayer Leverkusen from Germany, Galatasaray from Turkey or Turkey, as well as Bodo Glimt from Norway. Xavier Antonio says, my name is Xavier, my Moca Bicano, Sto do Barcelona. I don't understand the other part of the language that you've typed, but thank you so much, Xavier, for joining us. I say good morning to you. Como estás? Is that how it's pronounced? Jesus Christ. I hope I do not bite my tongue while saying that. But yes, como estás? And I say buenos dias to you. So anyways, I hope you're doing okay, but thank you for joining us. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel while you're here with us on this beautiful Friday morning. So those are the teams that went through the playoffs to join the top 8 that included Arsenal, Bayern Munich, Liverpool, Tottenham, Barcelona, Chelsea, Sporting CP or Sporting Lisbon, and Manchester City. So speaking of the UEFA Champions League draws, I gave you my predictions yesterday, and I still stand by those predictions. I can only wait. I can only suspect their predictions, so do not bet your arms on it. But at least we know that teams that went through the playoffs equally have a similar fate as the teams that went through in the UEFA Europa League, where you only have 2 options. So, for example, if you're PSG, you have 2 options. It's going to be Chelsea or Barcelona that you will be meeting at the round of 16. And if you're Newcastle, you have either of Chelsea or Barcelona. That's just basically how it is set up. Contrary to what you're accustomed to from the previous editions of the UEFA Champions League, where going into the round of 16, you went in blind and you drew anybody you drew. So other than that, you could not draw, I think, teams from the same league, at that stage of the competition. In the previous editions, that is before the start of last campaign, where we had a new format, a new expanded format inaugurated. So anyways, so like I said, those are the teams that went through. Now, then if you're Galatasaray or Atletico de Madrid, you'll either meet Liverpool or Tottenham Hotspur. If you're Real Madrid, if you're Real Madrid or Bodo Glimt, you'll meet either Manchester City or Sporting Lisbon. And if you're Atlanta or Bayer Leverkusen, you can either meet Arsenal or Bayern Munich. So, but like I told you yesterday, that if you for majority of these teams, or for some of these teams, their humble prayer will be not to meet an opponent with whom they are from the same domestic league, because that can be quite what? I don't want to say troublesome, but it can be a very, very difficult a draw to go through. And I say that because you then come up against a team that knows you in and out. They know your weaknesses just as much as you know theirs. They know their weaknesses as well. You come from the same league where you already probably competed twice, or perhaps even more, if you have had the rare opportunity of, let's say, meeting in the same cup competition. So, for example, just imagine in a wild thought, if Man City were to meet Newcastle at some stage in this competition. They have already met twice in the Premier League, with both sides winning either fixture at their respective homes, and now they went on and met twice in the EFL Cup. Manchester City won a tie twice, 2-0 at St. James's Park and 3-1, I think, in the reverse fixture. Then they are slated to meet. I think, is it going to be next weekend? I stand to be corrected, but it could be next weekend that they get to meet, because they will be playing in the 5th round of the FA Cup, which is essentially, I think, the round of 32, if Is it round of 32 or round of 16? I think round of 16, really. So there's that. So you'd want to avoid, if you're Man City, you'd want to avoid Newcastle at all costs, because whereas you have the head-to-head advantage over them, you can never know. It could be that they grow tired of being get by the same opponent, that then they pose the biggest challenge that you can ever have. So, like I said, and then if you're Chelsea, you'd want to avoid Newcastle as well. So, and if you're Tottenham, you'd want to avoid Liverpool at some point, because let's say Liverpool get drawn against Atletico, and you get drawn against perhaps Tottenham. Tottenham gets drawn maybe against Galatasaray. Maybe there could be a chance that you sort of meet at one point. Anyways, so we'll leave that at that. But my predictions were as such that PSG could draw Barcelona, Chelsea will draw Newcastle, Galatasaray will draw Tottenham Hotspur, while Liverpool will draw Atletico de Madrid, Real Madrid will draw Manchester City, while Bordeaux Glimont will draw Sporting CP, Atlanta will draw Arsenal, and Bayer Leverkusen will draw Bayern Munich. That's my prediction. It's not the draw. Please take note of that. It's not the UEFA Champions League draw. It's simply a mere prediction. Anyways, allow us to move away from those, predictions. Yesterday, we also had an opportunity to briefly discuss about Chelsea's staggering £342 million loss, according to finances from UEFA, which is the second highest in European football after Barcelona's 484 million pounds for the 2020-2021 season. That was also known as the COVID-19 season. So Chelsea are doing so many things right and wrong at the same time, but having their finances in order is not one of those things. So according to UEFA, so they had some really, really terrible losses there recorded to their names, and we can only wait to see what the cost implications of those will be in the long run. Of course, perhaps it also has everything to do with the fact that UEFA refused to consider Chelsea's sale of the women's side, as well as two team hotels at Stamford Bridge that managed to raise the club revenue in the excess of £270 million. So because they refused to factorize those in, because Chelsea had basically sold those respective two entities to a sister or a subsidiary company, it was never really considered. So take an example. For example, if let's say you're the owner of a business called Business Aeon, and Business Aeon, which let's say is a cleaning company, you're the owner of it. Now Business Aeon goes to the bank and borrows, let's say, $5,000, or which is essentially the equivalent of about 15 million Uganda shillings, or anywhere between 15 and 17. Then, because you feel that maybe the business is in trouble over maybe not being able to repay its own debt on time, so whatever collateral they may have mortgaged could be gone, could get taken, you then buy out the debt. In other words, you give them money to go and pay off their debt, and then you take over the debt. So in other words, you as owner of the business, the business owes you that much in debt repayment. So UEFA decided, now we're not going to consider that. We'll not be looking at it that way. So while the Premier League factored in those resources, which also included Aston Villa taking the same direction when they sold off their women's team to a subsidiary of the same owners, UEFA said no, we shall not be taking that. That's why Chelsea's debt is as big as has been announced in as far as UEFA finances are concerned. So they do get to record the second largest pre-tax loss in European football, but also the biggest loss ever in English football, at 342 million pounds, while that of Barcelona in 2020-2021 season was at a staggering 484 million pounds. So that is something you ought to consider while thinking about this debt situation. Quickly now, for those of you that are interested in understanding the circumstances of Cristiano Ronaldo acquiring a 25% stake in UD Almeria, which play in the second tier division of Spanish football, where they are third on that log with 48 points after 27 games played. Please go over to the channel under the live section and you watch yesterday night's episode of Football Tribe UG Live. Excuse me. You'll find all those facts in that episode. And then, because he did, but brief, just to give you a snapshot, through his subsidiary, a sporting agency called CR7 Sports, he managed to acquire a 25% stake in the Segunda Division club. That will be for starting. Then will start at the start of next season. They are looking to earn promotion because they are only 2 points off of the top place, which is Rio Racing Club. They are the ones at the summit of the Segunda Division, with Castellón coming second with 49 points. And I think their next game for Almeria is going to be against Albacete. That's the team that beat up against Real Madrid prior to the quarterfinals to knock them out of the Copa del Rey before they themselves, Albacete, got knocked out by Barcelona at the quarterfinals, for whom Barcelona are 4-0 behind against Atletico de Madrid after the first leg of the semifinals of the Copa del Rey. Then, then quickly, let's cross over to the Premier League, where it enters into match day 28. Now, ahead of match day 28, it has also been revealed that the Premier League are planning to introduce their own streaming platform for 380 Premier League games, but that is going to start over there in Singapore. That's according to CEO Richard Masters. So the Premier League is set to launch its own Netflix style of streaming service, with live coverage of all 380 matches over a season, available directly to fans, but only if you live in Singapore. So this project is going to start out in Singapore, and should it work out, then they will be looking to expand it across the different parts of the world, perhaps at different phases. Known as the Premier League Plus, the new app will be launched before next season, and will be the first time match coverage will be sold directly to customers or consumers. According to Premier League CEO Richard Masters, he says from next season onwards, from August, the Premier League Plus is going to happen. In other words, the Premier League is looking to cut out the middleman, and he says for the first time the Premier League is going to have its own customers. We are looking to build a business, but we are also looking to learn to see how that may be replicable around the world. So the Premier League is making a move to say yes. First of all, for those of you that care to remember, the Premier League back in the days had they sold still matches, naming rights to Barclays, and that's why up to this day some people still call it the Barclays Card Premier League. But Barclays, a UK-based bank, were the sponsors of the league, named sponsors. Then at one point, the Premier League also made the move to introduce what they call Premier League productions. In other words, for them to be the producers of their own product. By that I mean they sell a finished product, so they will capture the game using the machinery under Premier League productions, and then sell that or resell that to third parties. In this particular case, broadcast companies and televisions or media groups. That's why you have the likes of Bain, maybe TNT Sport, the likes of Sky Sports, the likes of Amazon Prime, and things like that, depending on who has the rights. DSTV over here in Africa, which was ordinarily under MultChoice Group, but MultChoice Group has since been acquired by Canal Plus. That's the French company that also extends streaming platform services as well as internet via Canal Box for their fiber cable internet. So first of all, it's a very, very big move for the Premier League to undertake that kind of direction. It's going to connect them directly to their customers, because the way you have movie production companies, the likes of Universal, Paramount Pictures, Lionsgate, etc. Ordinarily, they would go produce their movie, sell it to cinemas, sell it on CD, on DVD, and things like that. Now, eventually, as technology advanced, they now sell to streaming platforms like Netflix, like Hulu, like HBO, like Amazon Prime, like Apple TV, and things like that. So even Netflix, they themselves have made their own production houses for them to be able to produce their own TV shows and movies and things like that. So, or at least buy production rights and things like that. So the Premier League is looking to do something in the same realm, and we can only wait. If it is an affordable product, then trust me, it will be a popular item to cut out middlemen for whom in some parts of the world have enjoyed a bit of a monopoly. And for example, here in our context of Uganda and Africa, to a certain extent, we've had MultChoice, or commonly known as DSTV, with their subsidiary in GoTV, sort of be the sole distributors of Premier League content or Premier League games. And that has come at a cost with DSTV Premium, with DSTV Compact Plus, DSTV Compact. It's been quite expensive. But now with internet, for example, internet becoming slightly more affordable with time, you do suspect that if the Premier League bring their product that is a bit affordable, let's say around the ballpark of $10 for you to be able to watch throughout the entire month, then trust me, those sort of media companies will be in for a run for their money. Their media landscape is shifting or changing quite thick and fast in as far as multiple spheres of society are concerned when it comes to content consumption. That's why, again, MultChoice made a move to try and invest in filmmakers, sponsor shows and things like that, to buy more domestically produced films and TV shows. Why? Because they know that people are substituting TV gradually with either Netflix, Apple TV, Prime Video, Hulu, HBO, among other streaming services. As we speak, YouTube is also taking a good chunk of viewership away from traditional media, from radio, from TV, and things like that. So the competition within the media space is quite big, especially with streaming platforms, with social media platforms, and things like that. So we can only wait to see. That's why but I do suspect that in the next 10 years, streaming games will be already fully fledged. Now, and the beauty about this is that you already have these pirate companies or perhaps apps that have been streaming these games already. So in other words, it makes it doable. You just need to create a payment gateway to say, if you're having Premier League Plus, you need to, to pay us this amount, let's say $10, maybe $12 a month for you to be able to access all these games. And then your internet should come to your aid. In other words, you'll have people tapping it out at offices to access Wi-Fi, to watch certain games, and things like that. But either way, I think it will be a good move in the long run. So anyways, we'll leave the Premier League production or move on that and head into match day 8 that does kick off today. That is Friday, the 27th of March. The 27th of February 2026, when Wolverhampton Wanderers entertain Aston Villa. Like I said yesterday, Wolverhampton Wanderers do not have anything to play for other than trying to salvage their reputation to avoid being chopped off as the team with the lost number of points. I think behind the likes of Derby County, who I think got relegated some time back with either tally of 19 or 15 points. I stand to be corrected, but at least anywhere in between there. So Wolverhampton Wanderers are looking to make it their decision or their goal or objective not to go down in that manner with that kind of bad history or bad rap to their name. But to be fair enough to to Wolverhampton Wanderers, you ought to give your fans something as opposed to entirely giving up, so that next season they are going to roll with you in the championship. Excuse me. We know that the stage the season is at, you already have some disgruntled fans who literally may find no reason to come and cheer their team on, and knowing that next season they are going to play in the championship, other than having a little bit of hope that the organization that they represent or partake in will give them some beautiful, really beautiful space. When you look at the last 5 fixtures, of course, Wolverhampton Wanderers have lost 3 of those against Bournemouth, against Chelsea, and against Crystal Palace. More recently, Ivan Guessant, I think, scored that one. Then in between there, they have a 2-2 draw against Arsenal. Remarkable result they managed to register, as well as a goalless draw between them and Nottingham Forest in as far as things go. Then Aston Villa on the other side did win away to Newcastle. They lost to Brentford. They beat up against Brighton. Shared the spoils against Bournemouth and Wolverhampton Wanderers in terms of how they performed in the last 5 Premier League fixtures. So you look at Aston Villa, who apply themselves well, but sometimes it's not your day. Sometimes you're not clinical enough. Sometimes a ball kind of skews away from where you had anticipated it was going to go, or to put it before you have a strike at it. But against Wolverhampton Wanderers in that draw, Sheffield United had as many as Aston Villa had as many as apologies. Yes, I was looking at the last 5 meetings between the two sides. Aston Villa have had as many as 3 wins in this tie. They've only lost 1, and that was last season in the reverse fixture at Molineux, where they won the game by 2-0. Other than that, you'll have to go back to the 2023 campaign to find a 1-1 draw between these two sides. So if anything, it's a fixture that Aston Villa know how to win, having won it 8 times in the Premier League. Nonetheless, that in itself is not enough, because there's been 6 draws between the two sides and 7 victories for Wolverhampton Wanderers. That means anything can happen between these two. Like I said, Aston Villa, ambitiously, they want to secure or hold on to their place in the third or being third on the Premier League log, whereas Wolverhampton Wanderers, on the other side, what makes them poor is at the same time what makes them dangerous, that they are at the bottom of the Premier League. I do not think they will be rushing to have anything done or otherwise, but the stakes are really, really high for Aston Villa, higher than those of Wolverhampton Wanderers, because while Wolverhampton Wanderers are fighting for reputation, Aston Villa, on the other side, are looking for UEFA Champions League qualification, which we all know is very, very crucial for their success. If Unai Emery is to consider this season a success, then making it to the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League, where they got knocked out by PSG last season, will remain point of concern. So my prediction for that one is going to be Aston Villa to win it by 2-1, even though they've been far from convincing in recent times, in as far as their results are concerned. Then on Saturday, you have an early kickoff at 3:30 p.m. East African time when Sunderland make the trip to play. Something is choosing to betray me here. Yes, okay. Sunderland have a game. The Aston Villa game is today, by the way, at 11 p.m. Sunderland play away to AFC Bournemouth, so do not forget that one. It's the kind of game, I don't even know how to describe it, because it's trouble zested with disaster. Now, AFC Bournemouth have been a much improved side in recent times compared to Aston Villa, who you thought or you think have had their own struggles on many different occasions in as far as this campaign is concerned. But in any case, you do feel that Bournemouth, with their resurgence back, a bit of a difficult opponent for them to just have a walkover. And like we've seen, Man United in their three victories like we saw in the case of Aston Villa, in their 3 victories against Wolverhampton Wanderers, it's still not a given that they're going to win that fixture. So probably the same could be said about this one as well, that that while they do Sunderland make the trip to the Vitality Stadium, it's not going to be easy. Bournemouth are one of the teams that have had fairly decent good form for the last couple of months, while Sunderland have sort of been struggling, especially when it comes to forward injuries and things like that. When I say forward injuries, I'm talking about fresh injuries that have recently occurred. I think they will continue to be without Yuri Tillemans. I think he could still be absent. I need to find out from the medical reports, but Boubacar Kamara, James McGinn, Yuri Tillemans, Alisson, and Javier Elliott, these are players that have been out through injury, some with serious injuries, otherwise with a knock, really. So, I mean, very interesting stuff. Come on. I don't know why my Premier League page is failing to load sometimes. But yeah, that's the match that will come at 3:30 p.m. on Saturday. Then Burnley take on Brentford. Brentford have been really brilliant. Keith Andrews was handed a new long-term contract that has to run until June 2031. I think it's one that he does deserve, given the kind of performances that his side have managed to put in across the entire campaign. Then Brentford, ever since their draw against Arsenal, they've sort of fallen off the wagon. They've not been the same again, you know? So, then we have West Ham playing away to Liverpool. Guys, I'm just going through these games quite quickly. We'll digest them much deeper in the night for our weekend preview. And then Liverpool, West Ham, we know West Ham's problems, still trying to avoid relegation. Liverpool having to battle it for the top 4. They'll go into that game knowing that if they can win beat up against West Ham United, then they could get back well within the contention for UEFA Champions League slot, as Chelsea were to play away to Arsenal, because they are one of the opponents. That's Chelsea for the top 4 finish. And then Newcastle will take on Everton. Bit of a difficult game, and not much to talk about it. and then Leeds United at home against Man City at 8:30 p.m. That's in the late kickoff. Now, when it comes to Leeds Man City, I think the weighing scale is really in tatters because Man City outweigh the profession that Man City outweigh whatever you think Leeds United are able to bring on the table on that given day. Then quickly, still staying in the Premier League, on Super Sunday, you'll have 4 games to be played, with Brighton at home against Nottingham Forest, Fulham at home against Tottenham Hotspur, while Manchester City will take on Crystal Palace, and then Arsenal at 7:30 p.m. That's what your expectation should be for the Premier League on Sunday. Then quickly, in the Spanish La Liga, on the same day, which is Saturday, Rayo Vallecano take on Athletic Club, Barcelona take on Villarreal. Does promise to be a very entertaining game. Mallorca up against Real Sociedad, as well as Rio Oviedo against Atletico de Madrid. In the German Bundesliga this week, we have the derby, the Klassiker. That's the derby between Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund at 8:30 p.m. East African time on Saturday. But earlier than that, we'll have hard games between Werder Bremen and Heidenheim, St. Pauli away to Hoffenheim, Union Berlin away to Borussia Mönchengladbach, while Mainz 04 will be lucky. It's Mainz 05. They will be playing away from home to Bayer Leverkusen. Then quickly in the Italian Serie A, Como take on Lecce on the back of beating up against Juventus by 2-0. Napoli take on Hellas Verona away from home, while Inter Milan have Genoa. In the Standard League 1, Toulouse versus Stade Rennes, AC Monaco versus Angers, PSG versus Le Havre. What a fixture congestion this is. Then on Super Sunday, in the Spanish La Liga, you have Elche versus Espanyol, Valencia up against Osasuna, Real Betis at home against Sevilla, Girona take on Celta Vigo. So that's the gist of the Spanish La Liga, even on Super Sunday. But I think one of those games that I'll be looking forward to watch over the weekend, provided time is on my side, will be the derby, the Klassiker, between Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich having won it in the first leg by 2-1. So still in the German Bundesliga on Super Sunday, VfB Stuttgart take on Wolfsburg, Eintracht Frankfurt take on Freiburg, while Hamburg SV take on RB Leipzig. In the Italian Serie A, AC Milan are away to Cremonese, Sassuolo take on Atlanta. Sassuolo take on Atlanta, Torino take on Lazio, while AC Roma take on Juventus. Another big game in there in the Italian Serie A. Then in the French League 1, Paris FC take on Nice, Lille take on Nantes, Lorient take on Auxerre, Metz take on Brest, and Olympique Marseille take on Lyon. So that's the gist of fixtures that will be coming your way in as far as the Premier League is concerned this weekend. So make sure you do not miss out on any single thing regarding the Premier League and more, among other updates. Guys, allow me round it up here. It's been nice having you on the broadcast. For those of you that liked, thank you so much. For those of you that didn't like, we still appreciate your time and patience to be with us. Then quickly, I wish to say thank you to all our new subscribers that have recently subscribed to the channel. Hope you get to enjoy your stay with us. We'll be looking to do major previews between today, that's at 11 p.m. for our evening broadcast, and then tomorrow morning we will have another broadcast, as well as in the night, and then of course on Sunday we'll do some of the reviews from some of those games as well. Yes, but for our new subscribers, please go over to the channel under the video section, under the short section, under the live section, and watch all our content. Speaking of the live section, all of those that watch our live broadcasts long after they've ended, we do not take your love and support for granted. We support you. We appreciate you a great deal. I thank you for always choosing us or to be part of our broadcasts. It's been a pleasure. Allow me to wish you a wonderful rest of the day, and let's catch up again next time. Bye-bye for now. Stay blessed.